Why do some men become completely fascinated by a woman? Not because she constantly seeks their attention, but because she doesn't. She isn't always texting first. She doesn't need constant reassurance. She doesn't reveal everything about herself immediately. And when a man pulls away, she doesn't necessarily chase him. At first, this can be confusing, then it becomes intriguing. He starts wondering what she's thinking, why she isn't reacting, why she seems perfectly comfortable without him. And before he realizes it, he may find himself thinking about her more than he expected. But what actually creates that fascination? Is it mystery, confidence, emotional independence, or something much deeper? The truth is, not every man becomes obsessed with an independent woman, and healthy attraction shouldn't be confused with unhealthy fixation. But certain traits commonly associated with the Sigma female archetype can create a particularly strong sense of curiosity and attraction. Because she often offers something psychologically unusual, she doesn't make her entire identity revolve around being desired. And ironically, that can make her more desirable. Today, we're exploring 10 psychological traits that can make men intensely fascinated by the Sigma female archetype, and why the strongest attraction often begins with something much deeper than physical appearance. One of the first things a man may notice is that she isn't desperately trying to impress him. She doesn't constantly ask, "Do you like me?" She doesn't change her personality to match his preferences. She doesn't automatically agree with everything he says. She has her own opinions, her own interests, her own standards, and that creates something powerful. Authenticity. People can often sense when someone is performing for approval, but when a woman seems genuinely comfortable being herself, her attention feels more valuable. Why? Because she isn't giving it simply because someone is attractive or successful. She's choosing. And being chosen feels psychologically different from being automatically accepted. A man may realize, her liking me isn't guaranteed. And suddenly, her opinion matters more. Not because she's playing hard to get, but because she's not trying to be easy to impress. This is one of the biggest differences. A woman who has her own life doesn't disappear into a relationship. She has goals, friends, projects, interests, routines, things she's passionate about. If he texts, she may respond, but she doesn't necessarily abandon whatever she was doing. If he wants to meet, she considers whether it fits her schedule. If he isn't available, she continues living, and this creates an important psychological dynamic. The relationship becomes part of her life, not the center of her life. For a healthy man, this can actually be attractive, because he doesn't feel like he's responsible for her entire happiness. He gets to be her partner, not her entire identity. And that creates a relationship based more on choice than dependency. Mystery can create curiosity, but there's a difference between being mysterious and being emotionally unavailable. The Sigma female archetype often reveals herself gradually. You may learn one thing about her today, another thing weeks later. You discover her sense of humor, then her ambitions, then her deeper beliefs, then the experiences that shaped her. There's a sense that there's always another layer, and the human brain naturally wants to complete incomplete information. When something remains partially unknown, curiosity increases. A man may find himself thinking, what is she really like? What does she actually want? Why does she react differently from other people? The mystery isn't necessarily intentional. She simply doesn't feel the need to tell everyone everything immediately. Her privacy becomes part of her identity, and privacy can be attractive because it suggests depth. This is where attraction can become psychologically complicated. Imagine a man becomes distant. He expects her to panic. Maybe he'll receive several messages. Maybe she'll ask what's wrong repeatedly. But instead, she gives him space. She continues her life. She doesn't beg. She doesn't demand attention. And suddenly, he notices her absence. But here's the important distinction. This shouldn't be treated as a dating manipulation strategy. Playing games to make someone chase you isn't the same as genuine independence. The attraction comes from something healthier. She doesn't abandon her self-respect just because someone temporarily withdraws. If he needs space, she can respect it. If he wants to leave, she lets him, and if he comes back, she decides whether she still wants him. That last part is crucial. She doesn't automatically reopen the door simply because he knocked again. Some people talk endlessly about their standards. The Sigma female archetype often demonstrates hers through behavior. She doesn't necessarily say, "I demand respect." She simply leaves when respect disappears. She doesn't repeatedly announce, "I won't tolerate dishonesty." She distances herself when dishonesty becomes a pattern. She doesn't threaten, "You need to treat me better." She watches, and if nothing changes, she acts. That consistency can be extremely attractive. Because standards become believable when they're actually enforced, a man may realize she isn't bluffing. If she says something doesn't work for her, she means it. And that creates clarity. You know where you stand. You know that her affection isn't unconditional access. And you understand that maintaining the relationship requires mutual respect. Physical attraction can create initial interest, but intellectual stimulation can create attachment. The Sigma female archetype isn't afraid to disagree. She might challenge his assumptions, ask unexpected questions, introduce a different perspective, point out contradictions, and she doesn't necessarily do it to prove she's smarter. She simply enjoys thinking. A conversation with her can feel different. Instead of, "What do you do? Where are you from? What movies do you like?" The conversation becomes, "Why do you think people behave that way? Would you rather have freedom or security? What experience changed the way you see people?" Now, the man isn't simply interacting with her. He's discovering her mind, and that can create a deeper form of attraction. Because once someone becomes mentally stimulating, you don't only remember how they looked, you remember how they made you think, and that's much harder to replace. There is something powerful about emotional pacing. She may be warm, without immediately becoming completely vulnerable. She may care, without telling someone every insecurity she's ever had. She allows trust to develop gradually. That's important because vulnerability becomes more meaningful when it is earned. If someone reveals everything immediately, the emotional connection can sometimes become intense before genuine trust exists. But when someone slowly opens up, each new layer feels significant. A man may realize she doesn't show this side of herself to everyone. And that creates intimacy. Not because she's deliberately withholding information, but because she understands that emotional access should follow emotional trust. There's a difference between having walls and having doors. Walls keep everyone out. Doors can open, but only when the right person arrives. This may be one of the most powerful traits. Attention doesn't automatically impress her. A man can be attractive, successful, popular, charismatic. And she may still ask, "What kind of person are you?" That's a very different evaluation. She isn't necessarily impressed by status alone. She looks at consistency, character, emotional maturity, how he treats people, how he behaves when things don't go his way. And if the personality doesn't match the presentation, she loses interest. That can make her attention feel rare. Not because she's deliberately withholding it, but because she doesn't give it automatically. And psychologically, rare attention often feels more valuable than unlimited attention. But again, the healthy version isn't about creating scarcity. It's about having genuine standards. Here's the paradox. The woman who doesn't need constant attention may be exceptionally good at giving meaningful attention. When she listens, she actually listens. She remembers details. She notices changes in mood. She understands what someone means beneath their words. She may notice strengths he doesn't recognize in himself, and she doesn't necessarily flatter him constantly. Her compliments feel specific when she says, I admire how you handled that situation. It carries weight because she isn't saying it simply to make him feel good. She's observing, and being genuinely understood can create a powerful emotional bond. Sometimes people aren't obsessed with the person who gives them the most attention. They're fascinated by the person who makes them feel truly seen. And here's the final paradox. The Sigma female doesn't necessarily try to make a man afraid of losing her. She simply builds a life that doesn't collapse if he leaves. That means she can love deeply without becoming dependent. She can be vulnerable without surrendering her identity. She can commit without abandoning her independence. And that creates a very different kind of relationship. He isn't with her because she can't survive without him. He's with her because she genuinely chooses him. And that choice can feel incredibly powerful because deep down, most people don't want to be needed by someone who has no alternative. They want to be chosen by someone who could walk away, but decides to stay. So, what makes men fascinated by the Sigma female archetype? It's not simply beauty. It's not playing hard to get. It's not ignoring men. And it's certainly not manipulating someone into chasing. It's the combination of independence, mystery, self-respect, intellectual depth, emotional stability, and perhaps most importantly, choice. She doesn't communicate, please choose me. Her behavior communicates, let's see if we choose each other. And that changes everything.